The Nuggets keep on rolling. They're red hot. This team is great right now. Question is, who's the second best player on the Nuggets? Is it Jamal Murray or is it Michael Porter Jr.? We'll take a look at the Western Conference after the dust has settled on the trade deadline. Plus, everyone in the comments gets to make fun of me for the Super Bowl. All that and more on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day, being with us Monday through Friday, being an everydayer hanging out with us as we do all different shows throughout the week. We do appreciate your support, especially by going to youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets and joining the, let's see here, we have 8,932. Folks, we are 160 some odd away from hitting 10,000 this season. We are getting there. Please go to youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets and join up there. Or if you're listening on podcast, give us a 5-star review. Do appreciate all of our podcast listeners as well. I know a lot of you guys are listening on the way to work. I hope you're going to have a great work week on Monday. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I write 2 Substacks, The Denver Dig and Hardwood Paroxysm. His name is Ryan Blackburn. He hosts Pickaxe and Roll podcast, and he writes about the Nuggets for Mile High Sports. On tonight's show, we're going to talk about the Western Conference and how it looks after all of the trades and rescinded trades and weirdness and AD's injury and everything that happened in the last week in the Western Conference. We're also going to talk about Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray, and exactly who's the Nuggets' second best player this season. As a heads up, I will go through while Ryan is talking, and I will post the comments in relation to a large football game that was played tonight. That is my penance for my team getting its teeth kicked in. I don't want to talk about it because if you're listening to the show, you do not tune in to talk about that. You tune in and talk about the Nuggets.
Oh, now they've tuned in to not hear about it.
Well, I never argued they did. Let's be clear. I subjected you to it.
Oh,
I didn't, but I never thought you wanted it.
Okay.
But I am going to post all the comments here on the youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets so you can see everyone razzing me. Ryan, the Nuggets get the win versus the Phoenix Suns on Saturday night. They look awesome again. You call it, I think, a professional performance. It was like a straight up, just like up and down win. Now, Suns are they're in the bad place in about 1,500 ways. Injuries have part to do with that, but as well as their chemistry's in the toilet. What did you see in that game and what impressed you about that game?
Yeah, I think that so Denver goes into that with a 5-game winning streak. Things are going pretty well. It's awesome to see them kind of take care of business at home, and 3 games and 4 nights at home. They do a good job. But then you go on the road, and the last time Denver had gone on the road, they got their teeth kicked in by the Minnesota Timberwolves. So you don't know what's going to happen in that situation when that's how it goes. So I was interested to see what they would do and how they would respond to it. And it helped that Kevin Durant did not play, helped that Bradley Beal did not play. The Suns' solid 3 was not all intact, but they were not great. And Denver took advantage. They absolutely did. And they won each of the first 3 quarters, and the game was over by the 4th. And it was not over, but Denver was up 17-19 in that range. And they just never let it get close at that point. So credit to the Nuggets top down. Jokic was fantastic. Michael Porter did not play, and that was unfortunate because he had been playing so well and then has a hamstring strain that he has to sort of nurse, and we'll see whether he's healthy for this next game. But it was interesting to see Jamal Murray step back in. And one of the reasons why I want to talk about the Murray-MPJ dynamic in the next segment is because Michael Porter did not play and Jamal Murray stepped up and had a 30-point game. And I think that is notable.
Yeah, man. And every little bit, I think, from Jamal helps to kind of soothe the waters, right? Calm everybody. Hey, Jamal's been playing better, right? And he had that stretch where he was popping off for 20 every night and then it dipped back down again. And then he had this game. And so it's all right, maybe this is a little bit better. I also want to ask you what you thought of Jalen Pickett in his minutes. He hit 2 threes, 1 rebound, 1 assist, plus 10, pretty good defense. Yeah. I thought Jalen played pretty well there.
100%. The threes actually came on back-to-back possessions, that's notable to me because you take it and then you take the next one with just as much confidence, and you can get yourself on a roll for that reason. But he didn't do much else other than that throughout the game, other than just be solid, other than just play good team defense. Didn't take a ton of chances. I think Adam, who is, I think, number one Jalen Pickett fan club member right now, he noted that he didn't make any mistakes. And that's true. That's one of the things that's great about Pickett, is that despite the fact that he doesn't take a lot of chances, he doesn't make a lot of mistakes either. And for a Nuggets team that has been towards the top at some points in the turnover margin, they only committed 9 turnovers in that game against the Suns. And so many times in situations like that, you just do not want to beat yourself. When the other team is tired, when they are trying to hit haymakers just to stay in the game, maybe upset you, you just need somebody who's going to play solid defense, not turn the ball over. And Jalen Pickett did that.
Zeke Naji, 21 minutes. Is Zeke in the rotation?
Man, I don't know. It's funny to think about it like that. While Peyton Watson is out, he has to be in the rotation, I think. He's their next best kind of forward defender, and that's the thing that they really need. Their scoring is obviously great, and I just think that he's so much more consistent, even as an offensive player, than Hunter Tyson, because like there's just more that he can do physically, and he grabs offensive rebounds. The hustle is definitely there. It's nice to watch, and like we've laid into Zeke a fair amount on this podcast. I've laid into him on my podcast before because the expectation should be higher. He's a 5th-year player. So you want to see what he can do, and he takes advantage of this moment, and he's playing great defense pretty much every single game, and that's exactly what you want to see. So credit to him for stepping up in this moment. Been pretty cool.
5 boards for Zeke.
Yeah.
Anytime that he gets 5+ boards, I'm happy.
I'm not going to lie. My biggest pet peeve with Zeke is the hands. It feels like an adventure every single time he's trying to grab that basketball. And whether that's on a cut attempt, whether that's grabbing the offensive rebound or defensive rebound, it can be an adventure. But he did on one of the baskets that he had, I think it was a dunk in transition. I think it was his only points, actually. He caught a tough ball in transition and actually made a nice play. So he can do it. The question is whether he can do it consistently, and I'm glad he was able to get it done.
Okay. So good win for the Nuggets, but with Jamal doing this and what we know from Jamal and then what we have seen from MPJ, the question is, who's the Nuggets' second best player? Does it matter?
Before we go to the break, it should be noted that Nikola Jokic, 26 points on 13 shots. He kicked Nick Richards' teeth in, and Mason Plumlee, same thing. It was just a demolition.
I mean, they don't have any chance against them. 26, right. 11, and 9 in 28 minutes for Joker.
God.
A plus 19 in 28 minutes. Outrageous. He did grift 1 foul. I sent it right earlier.
Yeah. Matt and I argued in the earlier today.
We'll come back and we'll talk about MPJ and Jamal. Ryan, while I'm doing that, I would like you to check your microphone as well. We will be right back here on Locked On Nuggets. When I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've heard too much about their quality from friends and family, so I had to give it a try. And let me tell you, lives up to the hype. Underwear is tough, man. It's just tough. It's tough to get the right fit, the right comfort, finding the right style for you. Skims changed all that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance, comfort and style. You can choose the Skims boxer brief. You can choose the stretch cotton brief, the traveler. And what you don't like is you don't want it riding up, right? Like riding up is a nightmare, especially like if you're traveling, like that's an uncomfortable situation when you're surrounded by other people. Skims found a way to create the perfect 3-inch stretch boxer briefs that give you all the movement that you need to get throughout the day and the perfect comfort for those long trips out on the road without it ever riding up or losing their shape. All other 3-inch boxer briefs have officially been put on notice. Shop Skims men's at skims.com and Skims stores. Let them know that we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select your show in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gift for your Valentine or for yourself, Skims just launched their best Valentine shop ever. Available in sizes for women, men, kids, and even pets. Check it out at skims.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, your mic I was sounding echoey.
Oh, it was? Like, how does it sound now?
It sounds the same. It sounds echoey to me. I'm used to you sounding in crystal clear.
Oh, well,
But they're telling me I'm
a little bit closer to myself then.
Abraham's telling me I'm on a power trip.
I mean, Abraham has no idea because I definitely podcast with you pretty much all the time, so you would know if it sounds different. Does it sound okay?
Yeah. You sound fine. You sound more than good enough. I just thought that there was a better mic because I've done the show with you a lot. But I also could just be hearing wrong because I'm sad. That's possible. I have just bad affected hearing loss.
When you said the Nikola Jokic stat line earlier, I thought it was going to be 40 points and 22 rebounds, not 26 and 11 rebounds. That was weird. It was interesting.
Okay, so let's talk about MPJ and Jamal. This is your segment that you kind of wanted to talk about. So I think you have thoughts, and I would like to give you the floor to talk about them.
Yeah, so this has been an interesting moment for the Nuggets in that we were trying to figure out what the Nuggets' future was going to look like. It became clear that they were not going to break up their core during like this trip during the entire trade deadline stretch. So they're keeping their core four together. But the funny thing that you see when Jamal Murray is out or when he takes a step back is that that's when Michael Porter Jr. shines. And then when Michael Porter was just out in this last Suns game, Jamal Murray goes for 30. And the team, they both look good. They definitely both are pretty impressive. And I was just fascinated and continue to be fascinated by that dynamic. It's very difficult for teams to have three great scorers at the same time. It's not something that the Nuggets really have to worry about. But the pecking order for so long has been Jokic 1, Jamal Murray 2, Michael Porter Jr. 3. And sometimes even lower than that for Michael Porter. So I'm curious whether that pecking order should change, given how efficient Michael Porter has been, given how good he has been, especially lately. And I'm curious to get your thoughts.
I think the key is still, we've seen MPJ when he gets pressured, when there's high-level defensive pressure on him, I have not seen him able to handle it. I need to see MPJ in a series. The Wolves one's tough. Like that's an elite defense, right? I need to see maybe like the Grizzlies. Maybe that's like a good one, right? Brandon Clark, theoretically, right? Somebody guarding him, even Bane, putting pressure on the ball and him really be able to step up and navigate and create a quality shot, not just make wild, desperate, because he can. That's the thing about MPJ is like he can make bad shots. But you want consistently good, like you want to be like he navigated the defense, he rose above it, he found his spot and his angle, and he knocked it down. Right. I need to see that because the problem though here is like, hey, I've seen that from Jamal. I didn't see it all last year in the playoffs, except for the last second shots they hit over Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
So, somebody was hitting me on Twitter and was like, he was still clutching the playoffs. He still hit those shots over AD. And I was like, yeah. I was like, but you have to like really consider the rest of the game. Like he really was genuinely just pretty bad every single game, except for maybe 3. Feels like there was like 3 good games. Am I wrong? Am I underestimating?
No, you're 100% correct. I think in all 5 of those Lakers games, if you just take the first 3 quarters of the game, it's a different player. It looked like a different player entirely. And the great thing about Murray is that he can step it up in those moments. He can step it up in the fourth quarter of a game and take over and make the big shot when it comes to it. But so often you want to be as efficient and effective as possible. And even in the fourth quarter of this past game where Denver was on a roll, they were doing really well, Murray had been efficient up until that point, he still kind of navigates into that mid-range and takes some ill-advised shots and kind of just runs down the clock a little bit and doesn't necessarily get to the right spots and always stay focused and on point with the exact possessions that he should be getting. And I just think it's an interesting conversation to have given what we've seen. And I feel like there has been some growth from Michael Porter and that he was extremely good in that Lakers series in the first round. But you're right. Like he has to prove it more against these tough teams. I do think the way that he handled that Orlando matchup was pretty impressive. Were you there for that one was that on Thursday?
I missed that one.
Oh no. Yeah. That was, Yeah, no, that was a good one. And the way that he handled himself, the way that he navigated the defense from all three of Contavious Caldwell-Pope, Franz Wagner, and Paolo Banchero. Like that's a really solid trio of perimeter physical defenders. And so if he can do that consistently, then great. But again, we're not going to know until he proves it by the end of the year.
I just looked this up. MPJ last season averaged 41.6 touches per game. He's at 45.6 this season. So he is up. So somebody in the comments was talking about, Noam was talking about, MPJ is criminally misused by Malone. He should be averaging 20 to 25 points per game. There's a lot of possessions where MPJ decides to pass up opportunities.
Yeah.
Like he comes around. They've given him more DHOs. They've given him a ton more DHOs. And there's a lot of times when he comes around, he's just like, nope, I don't have it. And that's kind of the difference is like, he can't like extend the play and then drive on the guy. He's not going to come off of a DHO, force a switch, back up and then attack the player. That's not where his game is. Now, maybe he can, but that's not where even Mike thinks that he has the freedom to make that choice. You know, he's not going to get benched if he attacks a player one-on-one if he thinks he has an advantage. I don't think so. I do not think that he's going to get charged with breaking the offense then.
Yeah. Well, a lot of teams have the green light, yellow light, red light kind of narrative that they put on the shot selection for their players. Jokic has a green light. Murray has a green light. For years, I think Michael Porter even had a yellow light at times, but they have been trying to get him all of those shots as often as possible. And this year, he has a green light. He is able to shoot from anywhere they want him to shoot. They want him to space. They want him to score. And I think it's fascinating to see that growth in real time, but also kind of fighting against the identity that the Nuggets have had between the Murray Jokic two-man game. Haven't been a lot of Murray Jokic two-man game possessions this year, Matt. It's felt like they've gone through Jokic more and more. It's been more isolation and post up with him. And it's allowed for when Jokic doesn't want to do that. He goes into the DHO game with other guys, gets Mike involved a little bit more, gets Christian involved a little bit more. They've had a lot of growth in that regard, and it's actually led them to be, I think, a little bit more of a balanced offense rather than so heavily reliant on the Murray Jokic two-man game. Will they go back to that in the playoffs because that's their tried and true? I kind of think they will, but it's not going to be without them trying the other stuff first. And I think the way that Christian has grown this year, the way that Mike has grown this year, definitely feels like more of an equal opportunity offense is coming at some point.
Yeah, I've kind of always argued this, and there's been a lot of pushback. I mean, even Adam, I think, disagrees fundamentally that I've always been like, there's the two-man game, and then there's the Jokic offense, and they're a little bit different. And they've run a lot. I think I agree with you. They've run a lot more Jokic offense this year than two-man game. I think in order to protect Jamal to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I think what it really kind of comes down to is, look, in the Bucks run in 2021, there were series where Drew Holiday was great. There were series where Chris Middleton was great. Giannis was great every round. And I think that's kind of the same similar setup here. Like those two teams are not discernibly different. It's just that, like, you know, Drew's a worse shooter than MPJ. Like he's a defensive stalwart, but he's spotty defensively or spotty offensively. Mike's spotty defensively, but he's consistent as a shooter. Now you can take him out the same way that you can kind of take out Drew offensively by daring him to shoot, which is what Memphis did to Boston this year. Mid is a little bit more well-rounded, but Mid also can Mid get taken out in series too. Mid's not good enough to be above that. Like Jamal Murray and Chris Middleton, honestly, like Mid back in his prime, that's probably like a pretty good comp.
It's pretty good. Just the way that Middleton really handled the 2021 was where the Batman Robin comp really came up. It wasn't ever really like that, but
like Mid was an all-star, I think, a few times, but it wasn't like Mid was an annual all-star.
No, he was putting up what Murray's numbers were, which was like 25 and 5.
Yeah. And that's like, I think that's like a reasonable kind of comp there. And those teams were good enough to win the title, in part because their defense was great, but also because like their offense was also really good under Bud. And so I think that's probably a pretty good model here. I'm always just going to be of the opinion of like, look, there's going to be if you go to the finals, there's going to be an Aaron series, an MPJ series, and a Jamal series. And the problem that they ran into with the Wolves series is that was not a Jamal series and not an MPJ series. And then Aaron, I think, honestly struggled. Like I just think Aaron struggled.
Yeah, had one game where he really stepped up, but outside of it, like he was the linchpin for how they were going to play, and he just didn't handle it that well.
we'll talk about this in a second. Santa Cruz wants to talk about the stretch versus very good teams and how that will determine where the team actually is. That's wrong. Like, it's just wrong.
You and I disagree on this.
Okay. Well, let's get into it. We'll talk about it next here on Locked On Nuggets. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip or you want to bet on the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. You can do cool stuff on there. There's all sorts of live bets. As a matter of fact, I got like a really great bet in on one team to win the Super Bowl tonight that actually won. So that was nice. But during the game, you can actually do these same game parlays in game. And there's a lot of value in being the inverse correlation logic. So a good one to do sometimes if you're doing same game parlays, bet on one individual player that's high usage to go over 30 points and then bet the under, because what happens is great defenses limit everybody else. And then that one guy goes off. So there's opportunities to get in inverse correlation like that on your same game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making this party today. I hope you guys are having a great week. Hope you guys are healthy and happy and taking care of the people in your life that you care about. Ryan, all right, let's go to this instead of the Western Conference hierarchy thing, because I think this is more interesting. So you think, despite everything that I have tried to impart on you in my time, despite all of the stuff that I have tried to impart about the value of how the regular season is managed and all of that, after the All-Star break, when Jokic returns from the Bay and all the players return from Cancun or wherever else they go, they face the Lakers, the Pacers, the Bucks, the Pistons, the Celtics, the Kings, the Suns, the Thunder, the Wolves, the Lakers, the Wizards, the Warriors, the Lakers, etc.
Pretty tough.
Okay. Why do you think this matters?
I think it's a difference of opinion between you and me. I know what you're going to say here, that the Nuggets shouldn't necessarily be too focused on winning those tough games and proving how tough they are. Yeah, like they're so big and tough and strong and like they can compete with anybody. Look at what they did to the Celtics or whoever. I agree with that. I don't think that they need to show it against everybody. I don't think that that's a thing where they feel like they need to go all out. They have to continue to manage the regular season, but honestly, I feel like they've done a pretty good job. Like, throughout all of this, it's actually fascinating. The things that I pay attention to and have paid attention to pre-All-Star break have been, are the numbers trending in the right direction on the defensive end? And are you showing that you can compete against good teams? So far, both of those answers are no. And it's not like they have to be awesome in the regular season against those teams in order to win a championship. I'm not saying that. But it would be nice to prove it every once in a while. And I do remember back to 2023 where Denver had a whole bunch of those measuring stick games. They didn't win all of them. But in a lot of them, they showed how competitive they were, that they got to a specific level. That March 2nd game or whatever it was against the Memphis Grizzlies, that was a battle between 1 and 2. It effectively ended the race in the Western Conference at that point because Denver was up like 8 games in the West against Memphis. And everybody was like, okay, think they're good. And then they were able to take their foot off the gas. So I don't think that they're going to be battling they're obviously not battling for the 1 seed. I don't even know if they should battle for the 2 seed. I do think that they should be trying to get home court in the first round. That should be a goal that they have. But if it comes at the expense of health, then I don't think you can do that either.
You're talking about all sorts of stuff that don't have anything to do with each other is my frustration here. So I get what you're saying. I don't want to make it seem like you're being ridiculous because you're not. Like, I get it. Like, you want them to show that they can hang with the top ends. I get that. I'm not
at least once, because they're 2-8 against the top 4 teams in each conference. Like,
well,
2-8.
So they are 29-8, and they are this season they are 16-14 versus teams over 500.
Okay. It's fine.
In 2023, they were 29-18. That's great, but guess what? It's also worse than the Bucks, the Celtics, the Sixers, and it was better than all the teams in the West. So you can say like, aha, it was better than all the teams in the West. But the problem I have is, let's split this out, because what you're talking about is seeding, and the way to get seeding, I have to do the speech. I'm sorry. You win your division games, you win your home games, you beat teams under 500. That's it. That's how you do it. That is a tried and true method. And if you go through and you look at the history of all the teams that have accomplished this, that's what you're going to notice. You're going to look at all of like, what was their win percentage across all these different splits? And that's what you're going to see. You're not going to see how did they do versus the other playoff teams. You're not going to see that, because mostly those are always going to be coin flips, because those are good teams. And you may not play the best on a certain night. You may be a back-to-back, and maybe a 3rd and 4. Your plane got in late. The teams had the flu. There's too much noise in that stuff. But if you're able to build a floor and consistently beat these other teams, the teams that are worse than you, if you take care of business versus those teams that you play most often that are worse than you, that's how you get seeding. So if you want to talk about seeding, I'm never going to agree with you that that's how you do it. Like, that's just not.
I'm not really talking about seeding though.
Cool.
That's
cool.
Really,
that's cool. You mentioned it, so I brought it up. I wanted to correct it because that's important to me, right? Do you remember the 2020? I want to take you back to 2020, way back.
It's very old, very long ago.
There was a game in February before the shutdown. The Nuggets went to Los Angeles, and they played the Clippers. And the Nuggets walked into that game, and they thought that it was a normal regular season game. Like, okay, going to do a little bit joggy jog and some shooty hoops, and we're just going to play like a normal game. And the Clippers came out for blood. And they beat the snot out of them and called them soft, right? Like the Nuggets called themselves soft. And everybody was like, this just shows that Denver can't hang with those teams. That just shows you that Denver can't hang with those teams. ... And then what happened, right? My point here is that you can have these games versus these elite teams where you take it super seriously and they don't. And that doesn't prove anything. You have to have both teams going into the matchup being like, we're both going for blood, right? The Knicks on Saturday walked into that game like it was a normal Saturday night. The Celtics walked into that game like this is an ESPN main event the night before the Super Bowl between two Eastern Conference contenders. And they showed up and played like it. And the Knicks were like, whoa, what are you doing? And so that's my thing is like, I don't think you can prove it in these spots. I don't think it means anything. You can show matchups. The other thing is if you look back and you actually do the crosswork of going through all the histories of the matchups and be like, what's the correlation between how you did in the regular season versus this team and how you did in the playoffs versus that team? You got the correlation because it's going to be correlated because one team is better and will win more often, but it's not dramatic versus that differential. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. I understand that. It's not like, look, you and I are talking about slightly different things here.
Okay.
And I'm not doing the seeding conversation because what I'm doing is the strength of talent and the strength of team conversation, where I don't think the Nuggets are that strong of a team this year. I think that they are a tier 2 team. I think that they are not in the same tier as OKC, Boston, and Cleveland. And I think they're probably in the same tier as New York, but New York just has a tough matchup against them. And there are some other teams that are like that too, that Denver is better, like Memphis and potentially the Lakers. But I think that there's just a lot to learn over the course of these next few weeks when Denver gets kind of healthy, when they have their mix together. And I would like to see, if I were the Nuggets, I'd like to see Denver show up against some of those teams that they could potentially be facing in the playoffs and try to use that as an opportunity to get themselves prepared.
Okay. If they lose to the Wizards, but they beat the Thunder, what do you think?
I don't know. Like at this point, like that would remind me a little bit of 2023, where Denver did show up against those top teams like you were talking about. And then they had that 4-game losing streak in March. And they're like, okay, because I remember the conversation about them at that point. And I was like, don't worry about them. They're going to be fine. Look at how well they did against the actual teams when they cared. And that could be what this is.
DTSC is kind of saying what you're saying. It's proof you can compete with the top teams. I just don't buy that in the regular season. I just don't know how you can really think that. Like, if they beat all these good teams, you're going to be like, they're going to win the West. No, you shouldn't. You should be like, these are regular season games. It doesn't we'll see what happens when we get to the playoffs. If I would agree with you from the stance of they don't need to, if they lose all of them, it's a worry. It's a horrible sign, right?
Yeah, like that's where I'm at, because they have basically lost all of them.
Sure. I hear you. That's a good point. Is you got to be, if you want to say they need to be better. Okay.
Yeah.
But does it make sense what I'm saying where it's like, you just can't.
Of course. Yeah. You can't over index on all of the matchups in the regular season, because again, we see all this where, like you said, one team is going to care, one team is not. One team is going to be super injured at that point, or on a back-to-back, or they're going through a rough spell as a team, and the other team is playing the best basketball of their season. And you're just never going to have those things lined up where it's do or die for both squads until the playoffs. So, of course, I understand that. Everybody in the comments also basically agrees with me, because they understand, look, this is going to be a challenge for Denver. We just don't know how good they are yet.
Yeah, my frustration there is that it's because it seems like such a logically reductive or deductive thing, right? Like I'm arguing a logically counter-deductive thing. I'm saying, no, it actually doesn't matter if how you do versus good teams. Doesn't really matter at all. And I understand it's like, that can't be true. They need to prove that they can stand up and fight with the best. And I'm like, yeah, I get that makes sense. I'm just telling you that, like, if you go back and you actually do the work of going through all the NBA seasons and paying attention to the playoff race in excruciating, agonizing detail to the point where you start to lose your mind a little bit and wind up as a sad bald man, confused, you will wind up on the other side of this and be like, oh, you're right. It actually doesn't matter at all.
Well, here's my counter to that then, because the Nuggets won 53 games in 2023 in a year where the rest of the Western Conference was mid. They took advantage of the rest of the Western Conference and won against those teams that were above 500 and just really took care of business in that context. 2024, they win even more games. They do even better against those sub 500 teams and bone up on that record. But there were kind of some issues about what happens when you get into the playoffs and how they're going to handle it when they're not at their peak performance. And like when you're not going to, like, there were some signs, I think, in that year that they wouldn't get it done. And there were actually fewer signs that they wouldn't get it done in 2023, just based off of how they performed against some of those top teams, I think.
This does, like, you recognize, like, we're just like, it needs to look like exactly like 2020, like,
and it doesn't. Like, that's I know what you're saying there, and I understand that. And it's such a horrible argument for me in general.
This team, if they're going to do it, isn't going to look like 2023.
Yeah, because it's a different team.
Yeah,
so I think like,
yeah. The other thing I want to kind of point out that here is, him says, once we get to the playoffs, seeding doesn't matter at all. It's anyone's game. Two teams have won the NBA title as more than a 3 seed. Two. In the entire history, not in the last 10 years, not in the last 20, in the entire history of the league, 2 teams have won as lower than a 3 seed in NBA history. 9 teams across the entire expanse of league history have made the finals as more than a 3 seed. It doesn't happen. That doesn't mean it can't.
It's happened in each of the last couple of years, though, and I think it's one of those things that it might be becoming a little bit more regular given how flat the NBA is in general at this point.
Okay,
like that isn't that something that the new CBA is kind of affecting?
I agree to a certain degree, but I also just kind of wonder if we're like, look, the Lakers made a fluke run, the Mavericks made a fluke run, and we're over-indexing, right?
That's funny. It's like they can't. We have to get these big, awesome, elite teams. Like they have to win, right?
Well, no, but they also they don't win. That's the thing, Ryan. Neither one won the title.
I know, and like so,
you know who won the title? Top 3 seeds.
So if Denver is the 4 seed, will they be the fluke team that makes it to the NBA Finals and then gets crushed by Boston or Cleveland?
Maybe it's possible.
Should we talk about the West before we get out of here? Just like some of these other
things? Tell me what you kind of think about the Western Conference after all the trades and stuff.
Yeah, so Anthony Davis is out for a month now. I wonder if the Dallas Mavericks just missed the playoffs entirely because he's not going to be around. They probably have enough to get through, and it does coincide with the All-Star break, so they're probably going to be okay, maybe. But Sacramento made changes. Phoenix made some small changes on the fringes. Golden State has Jimmy Butler. San Antonio's De'Aaron Fox. The teams below them could rise above them. So I'm very curious to see how that affects the play-in tournament. And obviously, we've got plenty of time to figure out what that's going to look like. But that'll be interesting to track. The other thing that's interesting to track is the Lakers are way better than I thought that they would be. And they kind of are going back and forth between them and the Rockets at the 4 or 5 right now. And Denver's like obviously a stone's throw away from that 2 at 3. So I'm curious to see how 2 through 5 kind of plays out. I'm curious to see how 8 through 12 kind of plays out. And I wonder how that affects the playoffs when it comes around. Which of those teams do you think is actually the best team outside of OKC?
Denver.
The way that they're playing now, it makes sense.
I get it. I get why. The difference here, I think, is you're like, but this, that, and the other, and like this weakness and that weakness, and I don't know, and they don't have this guy and that guy, and they don't have shooting. It's true, and it's just like Memphis has a good half-court offense, but not a great one. They still struggle. They try and run really hard, and so when the game slows down, what does that look like? They play Zach Edey a lot, and he's going to die in drop coverage versus Jamal. They'll just get killed. They'll try and go small with Jaren Jackson. You can't do that because of Joker. So there's a matchup problem there. Houston might be a paper tiger. There's a lot of signs under the radar that Houston might actually slip here pretty considerably. So if Houston falls out and it's like Memphis and then this other team, then it's like, okay, the Lakers, they don't have a center. They're starting Jackson Hayes. They don't have a center. The Minnesota Timberwolves definitely would beat the Nuggets in a series. If the Wolves get the Nuggets, they're going to beat them. That's my opinion. Is that the Wolves will beat the Nuggets in a series. Right now, that would be my prediction. They might never see them. And there's a lot of teams that they would lose to. The Clippers are really good, but I still don't think that they have quite enough. I think they have enough to take Denver to 7, but not to beat them outright. Dallas lost AD probably for many, 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 many weeks. I don't know what's going to happen with them. If they're fully healthy, I don't like that matchup for Denver. That one's really scary. I'm not scared of the Kings. I'm not scared of the Suns. I'm not scared of the Warriors. I'm not scared of the Spurs. That's my read on the West.
Last question for you. If Minnesota is locked into the 6 in game 82 of the season and the Nuggets have an opportunity to go from the 3 seed to the 4 seed to get into OKC's side of the bracket, would you lose intentionally?
Tell me the scenario again.
So if Denver's in the 3 seed and Minnesota's in the 6 seed, okay. Minnesota's locked at 6. Would you lose intentionally if you are the Nuggets to get out of Minnesota's side of the bracket, to get out of facing them in the first round?
No, because OKC is that good. You got to respect OKC. Like you got to have you have to have appropriate respect for OKC. I do think there's such a thing as messing with the basketball gods. It's also like, look, is Minnesota a problem in a matchup? Yes. Were the Nuggets up 20 on a better version of them in game 7?
You just said they would beat them.
I know, because I'm concerned about the matchup, but like that's like a probabilistic lean.
Okay.
Right? It's not like an absolute. I just think you take your chances and just try and play it straight.
Interesting. Okay. I think it's fair.
Would you take it?
I would seriously think about it. I think Minnesota has their number both on the court and mentally.
I feel like under the surface you want to just come out as an OKC hater and you won't let yourself do it. And
what do you mean?
I want to free that part of you because I think it'll be great content. I think you kind of think
me who has said OKC is by far the best team in the league right now and is definitely going to win the championship, and has very healthy and appropriate respect for OKC.
You think they're definitely going to win the championship?
I said that previously. I don't think that they're actually going to I don't think they're definitely going to win the championship, but I would bet on them. If I had $100, I would put 50 on them on OKC.
Well, then I was wrong. Yeah. Impressive, considering that their best player is just a grifter. We will be back later this week.
Nikola Jokic will put up 40 points and 22 rebounds against Portland tomorrow night.
I love that take. Portland's been playing better. These games should be good.
40 and 22.
Have yourselves a great week. Hope you guys enjoy it. We will be back on Tuesday with Swipa. We'll probably do a post-game show tomorrow night after the Monday game versus Portland. We'll talk to you guys again then. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.